Okay, this is going to be yet another video ripping to shreds what is going on with this Lando Norris penalty and the appeal process, and then the media presenting things the way that they have. So, what we've had so far, we know that Lando Norris was penalised, given the penalty for having been run off track and supposedly made an overtake off track. That's the way that they've presented it. They put, well, straight away after the race, they put Anthony Davidson in front of us to explain it, that Max was fine. Jolyon Palmer was on the F1 TV channel doing exactly the same thing as Davidson. They then rolled out Karun Chandok explaining the reason why Max was in the right. Also, that you can see, this is on the Sky Sports F1 YouTube channel. They've done the Martin Brundle one, explained why Lando Norris and McLaren's appeal was rejected. So that already is for media presentations to tell us that it's all okay. And then there's this one. So on Facebook now, Karun and Martin have done yet another presentation of it to validate Max, validate the decision, validate the FIA, present that the rules are somehow questionable. And the reality is, all of it is entire bullshit, and all of it is a facade. Even this presentation that I'm going to go through in this video between Brundle and Chandok is it's the false narrative. What you have is you have the actual supposed, the presented debate. The confines for that debate have already been set, and this is again something that happens in life. You have the way they present it is you have Brundle on one side and Chandok on the other, and Brundle saying, "Oh yes, I agree with McLaren," and then Chandok going, "Yes, but the rules say blah blah blah," and so they pretend to have a debate, but ultimately they still fall down on the side of the FIA and Max Verstappen, strangely enough. What we actually need to do before I go into this is drill down to the underlying principles of truth. And that is quite simply, look at the sport of Formula One. How long has it been going? 60 years, 70 years? Who knows? Somebody will be able to answer that, no doubt. You've got a governing body that create the rules and regulations for that sport. That governing body is the governing body for motorsport worldwide. Now I can get the figures. We can find out how many employees this has got. This is a massive organisation, the FIA. You know, the equivalent of FIFA, the equivalent of the WTA, the equivalent of the Olympic Committee. You know, massive global organisations that oversee and administer the motorsports worldwide. Okay, and over the course of time, over decades, they will have developed rules. Why would they have developed rules? Because everything is an evolution. Okay, we start something, we see where things fail, and we introduce something to ensure that those failings are dealt with. And if it's a safety concern, you introduce a measure to deal with something to make things safer. That is the way that society goes. Okay, we do not have, or we shouldn't have, things such as the film The Running Man, where people are basically fighting off death for entertainment. Okay, that's not what it's about. We're supposed to be a civilized society. That's not what we're looking at doing. It's not like the ancient Roman times where people are put into the auditorium and made to fight lions. Doesn't end well, that sort of thing. If that ever happened, who knows? So what we're looking at is a sport. Okay, they tell us that they are the governing body for motor sport. Okay, so we're not looking at people dying. We want to protect people from dying if they're engaging in sport. It's all motorsport. That's not just Formula One. It's the other types of motorsport all across the board. You know, WEC, touring cars, all sorts of things like that. Now, people can get engaged in motorsports at all different levels depending on whatever their budget might be. All right, you used to have a fair bit of money, but obviously your budget's going to depend at what level of motorsport you can compete at. And even let's say you've got £500,000 that you want to blow on competing in motorsport for a season at some formulas. If you buy, for example, a Porsche to compete in the Porsche series, let's say the car cost you 250 grand, and then the other 250 grand is running that car for the year. The rules of engagement for racing are not such that you can just smash into the other cars willy-nilly, causing thousands of pounds worth of damage due to drivers just going, yeah, there's no rules, we can just smash into each other. That's stock car racing. That's something entirely different. So you have rules and they have a purpose. They're both on the grounds of safety and the grounds of motorsport's not about smashing other cars up. Okay, so how do we set these parameters so that we just don't smash each other up? And these parameters have to be adhered to by all competitors. It's not okay that one competitor understands the rules much better than everybody else, and so they do it differently. This is what they want to present. So going back to the truth and the basics and the evolution of creation of laws and rules. We already have the rules of engagement of motorsport, and they were a known thing. And the way things are presented almost is that when Charlie Whiting died, the rules died with him. Nobody else at the FIA knew what the rules were. Oh, that was one of Charlie's rules, but nobody knows what it is with the safety car. Really? You've got a global governing body of a sport. So you've got FIFA. Let's say the head of FIFA, I don't even know who it is at the moment. Okay, the head of FIFA dies. Does that mean that nobody in FIFA knows the rules of football now? Oh, what are the rules of football? Nobody knows. Oh, Charlie Whiting died, and therefore nobody knows what the rules of Formula One are. Oh, Charlie Whiting's died, so we'll now change what are the driving standards and the rules of engagement. And nobody has looked at what those rules of engagement are, okay, the guidelines, the parameters, and if they've decided they needed amending, they've not looked at them and determined, okay, why have these been developed this way and what is their purpose? What are they achieving? And when we propose changes to them, what will them changes achieve? Will there be any negative consequences? Because these rules have been developed for a purpose. They've been developed for safety, and so that everybody adheres to them, everybody understands them, they can be utilised universally in all forms of motorsport and at every venue that motorsport takes place. And that's the purpose of a driving standards regulation. Everybody that's engaged in that sport knows the parameters for competing in that sport. Just like if you are a footballer, a rugby player, a cricketer, any other global sport, okay, any global sport that you will want to take part in, you'll know the rules of it and you'll know the things, the parameters of what's acceptable and what isn't as a competitor in that sport. And they've been developed over years. And everybody involved in the sport and the administration of that sport, they know what it is and they know the purpose of that. And if they make changes to that, they make changes to stamp out something that is wrong, that it's harmful. So they change it because it is causing harm and therefore they need to police that to make things better. So why have they supposedly changed the rules of engagement? Why, come the 2021 season when Max Verstappen was allowed to get away with everything, do we have Jonathan Wheatley saying, well, Michael, that's simply a case of let them race. That's definitely a case of let them race. What does let them race mean? Okay, and who does that benefit? When everybody else adheres to the same guidelines, the same rules, why have them rules been changed? To benefit who? What is going on there? And if that's the case, and if the rules have been changed to benefit one competitor, that's corrupt. That's corruption. That's not playing sport on a level playing field. That's bastardizing a sport to the benefit of one competitor and the detriment of everybody else. And people will jump up in the comment section to say, oh, but everybody else can conduct themselves like that. No, everybody else actually knows that the safety implications of such could result in death, so they don't do it. But if one person does it and goes unchallenged, they'll then achieve domination through doing that. That's how tyrants achieve power. That's how tyranny rules, unfortunately. So, we're going to go through this presentation between Brundle and Chandok. The things that Chandok says just do not make sense. They can be highlighted as not making sense, and he's put in front of us, put on the TV, put on social media to validate something that's wrong, and none of it makes sense. And when something doesn't make sense, it's wrong. If it makes sense, and with a rule and a regulation, you can work it through, and you can work through all the scenarios, and if it stands the test of working through every scenario, that's why it's become a rule and a regulation or a guideline that's actually valid. If it doesn't stand those tests, then it's an invalid rule or regulation. And that's the reality of it. And that's the way that law should work. And originally did, until law has become bastardized. And again, through a tyrannic process of tyrants twisting the purpose of law, utilizing this notion of it, turning everything into an argument, and as long as they can win the argument to absolve themselves of consequence for wrongdoing, that's presented as, oh yeah, that's the process, and yeah, accept the process. No, the purpose is to differentiate between right and wrong, and there's a clear purpose for doing that, for having those parameters. Anyway, we're going to go into the presentation. So, Sky Sports, the contracted broadcasters, owned by Comcast, and Comcast are a massive media firm. I believe not Liberty Media, Vanguard and BlackRock, two massive financial organisations in the States. Each of them own probably 10% or something like that of Comcast. Each of BlackRock and Vanguard also own probably 10% each of Liberty Media, the owners of Formula One. So Liberty Media then utilise Sky as their contracted broadcaster. See, everybody's linked with everybody and they're all making money out of it, okay? And this is the way the system works. These are the paid people presented to us as experts to explain to us the wrongs and rights of something that is wrong. And I'll go through exactly why it's wrong. They'll present it the wrong way round, and they'll lie about things, as we've already gone through. So let's see what's being put in front of us. Karun and Martin.
We've heard from the drivers. We've got the 3D animation built.
So we now got a cartoon again. We've not got the real footage. We've got a cartoon. Now, they've got loads and loads of cameras at the track. We've got loads of different camera angles, and yet we can't be shown them. We have to have a cartoon instead.
To try and illustrate just how it unfolded. So,
why do an illustration when you can use the actual footage? How many cameras have you got that site? We've seen various angles of the George Russell Valtteri Bottas, various angles of the Carlos Sainz getting pushed off track. Pushing Max Verstappen off track on lap 1. We've seen various angles of this one. I'm sure more will exist. But we're having to make a cartoon.
On the run down from the straight towards turn 12. At this point, Lando Norris
is ahead. right? He's ahead. He's performing an overtake. Now, for the majority of drivers, they accept that a car has just passed them and they are approaching a corner for which they need to reduce their speed. They're on the inside line. In order to make the corner, going around an inside line at a corner, you need to decelerate at a faster rate, well, more than the car on the outside, because the outer line can actually carry more speed around that corner, so it doesn't need to decelerate as much. So you're behind, you're on the inside, having just been overtaken, you're on the inside, and you need to decelerate harder. So you're not in a position to attack. You're not the attacking car on the inside trying to make that. You're the one that's just been overtaken. So you're not now on the attack. But Max Verstappen, no, he doesn't yield. He doesn't accept that he's been overtaken. Max sends it through. And he does it in a way where he is out of control and can't keep his own car on the track. That's dangerous driving. Karun will present various, but the rules don't say this. We have general principles of motorsport driving, and they are driving, you've got to drive your vehicle in a safe manner. You have to be in control of your vehicle and you have to drive in a safe manner. And if you are deemed to be driving in an unsafe manner, you will get black flag from an event. You can go down to your local karting track and they will tell you that if you are deemed to be driving in an unsafe manner, they will black flag you and prevent you from competing anymore. That's motorsport. So, if you cannot keep your car on the track because you are carrying too much speed to actually navigate that track, that is driving in an unsafe manner. That's a general principle of motor racing and it applies to everything. So if we have little sub rules relating to certain aspects, such as the notion of how you overtake, the general principle of motor racing still holds true. And that general principle being, you have to drive your car in a controlled and safe manner around the circuit. And that applies to every competitor. So, by Max Verstappen carrying more speed into this corner now, that's a problem. Rules of engagement. And again, why we're using a cartoon now, it doesn't help us. What would help us would be to show the onboards whereby we can hear the engine tone, we can hear where they stop accelerating and therefore go off the accelerator and onto the brakes, and you'll hear the down changes. That is the point in time where we assess who is entitled to be left room around the corner. If Max Verstappen is at least halfway alongside on the inside, he is entitled to be left track room around the inside of a corner. They are the parameters. If he's not at that point, he has to back out. If he's halfway alongside at that braking zone, Lando Norris will know that he has to drive a line around that corner that affords Max Verstappen track room. That is the rules of engagement. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care what Karun says. I don't care what the driving standards say in this fake document. That is what the situation is. Lando has to know at that point what he has to do. Because if he doesn't know at that point, he needs to know at that point because he needs to then slow his car accordingly. He needs to determine at the braking zone, right, what line am I allowed to take around this corner? If I am entitled to the corner, I will go straight for the apex. I will put in the braking force and decrease my speed to an appropriate speed that will enable me to hit the apex and come out that corner on that far curbing, the fastest line round, because I don't need to consider the other car. If the other car is in the right location and is entitled to be left room, I need to leave a wider line, and hence I need to take a different speed and brake my car differently. And Lando Norris, the car on the outside, needs to know that at that point in time, the braking zone. That is why that rule was developed, for that purpose. and has been developed like that since the 80s. That is what all drivers in motorsport will know, and will know its purpose. The Formula One audience that they've tried to attract and lie to, they pretend that who's told you that? Who told you the purpose? And they just try and go, oh, it's the apex, a singular moment in time, to try to make a judgment as to who has the right when it's far too late. You don't earn the right at that point in time. You earn the right at the point where you're making a decision. The apex isn't that time, it's too late, and if you've raced there to get there, to make that decision, and I've got there by going too fast at a speed that you then can't control, well, that's clearly that's not applicable then, is it? If you race somebody to the apex so that then earns you the right to something, and yet you are out of control and then go off the track, well, you've done it wrong then, haven't you? Well, that's very clear. So anybody that would try to seek to argue that, you're wrong. And it's so simple, but you're wrong. But they will want to pretend that this is an argument, this is a debate. Some people would think this, some people will think that. Oh, and the rules don't really let us know either way, do they? And this is what they do all of the time. And when they condition people to think that as long as you think what you think and somebody else thinks what they think, just continue to argue, nobody knows right from wrong. And when people behave like that in life, then what we have is controversy after controversy after controversy, problem after problem after problem, people trying to take advantage of a situation for their own personal gain every time, no adherence to rules and regulations. It's a problem. Society and societal values descend. And the people that are impacted by that are us at the bottom. Us. Because the billionaires that are the ones in control of the media, well, they don't associate with us. Their lives aren't impacted with the same struggles that ours are. They've got enough money to throw at whoever they want and get them to handle their problems. They can carry on living their dream on their super yachts, on their islands that they've bought. They don't need to worry about the riff-raff like us. Yeah, any little problem that comes up, they just throw a little bit of cash at it and somebody else goes and deals with it for us. That's not our lives. Okay, but what happens is all of the problems that are being created that cause us the problems, that cause us to fight each other, because they've conditioned us that it doesn't matter about us all adhering to rules and regulations that have been built up over time for certain purposes for the greater good. No, we'll break them, because by breaking them, it enables the billionaires to make loads of money, enables them to live their lifestyle. And I know this is too much for people. I already know that by going about my videos like this, it causes a lot of people to switch off. But there's no point in me talking about things in just a superficial way. There's much greater meaning to what is going on in Formula One. Much greater meaning. There's what happened at Abu Dhabi 2021. The societal implications of that are so much deeper than most people will ever realise. And that is why it's so important to show the world the right thing. And that's why it's so important to overturn it. And that's what I will dedicate my life to doing. That's what it's going to be. So, this one is another case. Have a look at this. So let's listen to what they're saying.
It's got in front. We could see from the onboard and from the 3D animation. McLaren think now, effectively, Max Verstappen becomes the overtaker. What do you...
So, Karoon says, once again, McLaren think Max Verstappen now becomes the overtaker. What do you think in the comments section? Okay, So we've introduced the notion of a debate. Which car is in front? Which car is behind? It's clear to see from the picture there's a car in front and a car behind. Is there a rule that says the overtake is complete when? Is there something that defines what determines an overtake? You are considered to having overtaken the other car at this point, when you have achieved this. There isn't, is there? There isn't. Because there is no way of defining that other than this. If two cars are racing one another, there is a moment in time where one is ahead and one is behind. Yeah? They can be side by side, one is ahead, one is behind. At any given snapshot, it could be one car is ahead of the other. If they cross the finishing line, like this, which car finishes in a higher position? Well, the actual answer is Lando Norris would finish ahead of Max Verstappen if that's what the two cars look like when they cross the finishing line. So therefore, that constitutes Lando being in the lead. That constitutes him having made the overtake. So how else would you define it? Because that defines it in terms of a race result. So if it defines it in terms of a race result, then that defines it in terms of having made the pass on track anywhere else around the track as well. So trying to suggest, oh, this isn't the complete maneuver. Well, what we've done, we've got ourselves ahead. We've come from behind, we've got ahead, and we're now gone into a braking zone. Well, that's an overtake. That's what it is. Karun is asking Martin the question. Martin will say this.
I reckon.
I agree. That was my point. I made that point in my column for Sky F1 on the Monday after the race. He is substantially ahead, and I think that then makes Verstappen the overtaker.
So Martin agrees. He made that point in his column. He told us in the other one that he asked the question in his column. Okay, so Lando's ahead. That's all there is to it.
But we're told that the overview is the entire event is just one. So
the entire event is just one. What's the entire event? Define the entire event. Is the entire event the whole Grand Prix? Is the entire event just this lap? Is the entire event from the moment that they exited the corner and Lando being behind attempted to make the overtake? Up until what point does that end? Is the entire event only until they reach the apex of the corner? Or is the entire event until they've got around that corner with both cars still on track? Define, is it anywhere written in the rules and regulation what defines the entire event?
it seems as if the Lando Norris remained the overtaker through the whole process.
Through the entire event and the whole process. What is the whole process? Are you trying to say, or is the FIA trying to project that the whole process is until they get to the apex of the corner? Well, I will do a video, I'll do several actually, demonstrating that that's not the case, and that's never been the way that they've actually adjudicated it, unless it involves Max Verstappen, obviously. But for every other driver, they don't adjudicate it like that. Are they trying to say the event is all about the race to the apex, without considering whether or not the cars, having reached the apex, are driving in a safe manner? You know, that fundamental principle of motor racing, of the fact that each driver has to be in control of their car and drive in a safe manner. And if you are deemed not to be doing that, then you'll get black flagged in that event. Okay, and because again, look at the regulations, look at what the black flag is given for. In fact, I'll do that for us all now. Well, you can do this yourself with a quick search. The black flag has a significant meaning for drivers and is used by race officials to communicate with drivers about their instant disqualification from the race. This disqualification can result from various infractions, including rule violations, unsafe driving. Why has it just done that to me? Fucking hate this fucking search engine. It's dog shit. Right. Anyway, unsafe driving or violating race regulations. Okay. Unsafe driving, you can get a black flag. Okay. That's what motorsport's about. If you drive unsafely, so if you go into a corner with too much speed and go off the track, you are driving in an unsafe manner. You can get a black flag. Now you can go onto the Formula One website and they'll tell you with their beginner's guide to Formula One flags, and they've got all the different colours, and they're really informative. Is the Formula One website. Black flag. It will say the black flag is used to disqualify a driver and order them to return to the pits. To their pit garage at once. The decision to show the flag rests solely with the stewards. What's it for then? What would give you? Why would they disqualify you, Formula One? So, Formula One, that's given us so much information, isn't it? The Beginner's Guide by Mike Seymour. Right? This is the kind of bullshit media that we get. It doesn't tell us anything, does it? Okay? But that's all you need to know there. Disqualification for unsafe driving. Right? So it's not about getting to the apex first. It's not about, define what constitutes the entire event. Here we go.
Yeah, so the stewards viewed that as being the case. And if we look at from Max...
So the stewards viewed that as being the case. Come on, Karoon.
And I think that then makes Verstappen the overtaker, but we're told that the overview is the entire event is just one. So it seems as if the Lando Norris remained the overtaker through the whole process.
Yeah, so the stewards viewed that as being the case.
So the stewards, so the FIA stewards, have decided that he is the overtaker throughout the process. And that's what Karoon affirms. Okay? Makes that sound as if that's the valid decision. Alright? Despite the fact that we can clearly see there's a car ahead, that the timing screens from F1 depicted him as being in third, so therefore having made that overtake because he was ahead, and that Verstappen was in fourth, behind. Timing screens reflect that, and yet the stewards don't accept that this was the car that was ahead, think that the manoeuvre was not complete, and they will only decide whether it's complete at a point in time, at a snapshot point in time that they determine. Okay? Not now. Instead, they've decided that they're going to decide when a photograph is taken at the apex of the corner. Why? Is all your braking done by the corner? Have you braked your car to an appropriate speed so that you can make it around that corner on track at that point in time? Well, yes, that's what should happen. Okay? But what if you haven't? But you've still got to that point ahead. You see, these guidelines and regulations, if I'm asking these questions, do those guidelines and regulations, I keep using the word regulations, they're driving standards guidelines, do they hold true? And they don't, do they? If the decision is made at a snap point in time, which is the apex of the corner, where all they look at is which car is ahead at this point, and then we will apply whichever rules that we think based on the car that's ahead at this point. Does that take account of a car going too fast because they went there with too much speed just to win the race to that point that they can't remain on track? Well, it doesn't count for that, does it? So therefore it's an invalid rule. Because if that then happens, then they've got no right to that priority, have they? They've achieved that condition in an unsafe manner. And that's not the point of any driving standards. Driving standards that's been developed over 50, 60, 70 years, maybe longer. So who has changed them and for what purpose? And who in the FIA, this massive global organisation, the governing body of a sport, who didn't analyse the purpose of the existing regulations when there were proposals to change them? And who was unable to say, no, we can't change it from being that due to these problems. You're making these proposals, it will cause this problem, and our responsibility is safety and sporting fairness, and what you're proposing is against that. But these two are put in front of us to pretend that it's all valid or it's all confusing.
And if we look at from Max on board, this is the point where he's come off the brake pedal, really, hasn't he?
He's going into a corner and he's come off the brake pedal to win the race to the apex. But that means that he's then out of control and can't keep his car on the track. If you're out of control and can't keep your car on track, well, you're driving dangerously. You're driving dangerously because you're not only a danger to yourself. Would you do that in Monaco? Because these are a universal set of guidelines to apply to every motorsport, to every driver, at every venue that motorsport is carried out. And motorsport is carried out at Monaco, a street circuit where there are no or very few runoff areas, and most of that track, outside of that track, is just Armco barrier. If you entered a corner at Monaco with too much speed, racing someone to the apex, with too much speed having got there that you cannot make it around the corner and you just slam into the barriers, are you driving in a safe manner? No, you are not. So, is that a valid determining point as to who has the right? Or is the valid determining point about safety? Do you need to make that determining point well before the apex? Because that is the thing that determines the speed that you can pick around that corner, depending on the line that you are allowed to take around that corner, depending on the positions of those two cars and who is entitled to be left room around that corner. Yes, that was the regulation. The driving standard. Nothing to do with the apex. Nothing to do with the apex. I want to know who has proposed this notion of the apex being the point in time where you measure it. Was that Christian Horner? Was it Jonathan Wheatley from Red Bull? Was it Helmut Marko? Red Bull rules, everybody. Oh, who are they for? Who are they for? And let's work through Red Bull rules, everybody, because we got Red Bull rules at Abu Dhabi 2021, where any doesn't mean all, and 48.13 overrides 48.12, and 15.3 means the race director can do whatever he wants. None of them are valid. I've destroyed every single one of those. And I'll destroy every single proposal that Red Bull want to do to bastardize this. And therefore it demonstrates that actually none of this is actually valid. None of these supposed driver guidelines are valid. When did they come in? Who brought them in? And that will then demonstrate corruption. That will demonstrate a governing body of a sport that's not fit for purpose because it has changed valid regulation, valid guidelines, valid parameters, and changed them, introduced something else for a different purpose, which isn't the purpose of a governing body. That demonstrates that something is corrupt entirely. But we've still got the media to convince us. So let's have a look.
Release the brake pressure, because all he's trying to do is race to that apex point. He knows if he gets to that apex first, then at that point he's in the pound seat, really, and that's because.
So Karun is validating. Oh, Max has come off the brakes to race to there. Okay, because he's then in the pound seat. Right, having raced to there, then what? Motor racing takes place around motor racing circuits. You have to go around that circuit safely and on track. And if you can't do that, then you are likely to incur a penalty. Okay, if it's a track that's enclosed by barriers and you can't do that, you will crash. If there are no barriers, then you might get away with getting off the track. But if you gain a position or defend a position through going off the track, you'll get a penalty. If you force another car off the track, you'll get a penalty. We already have forget these supposed overtaking rules. We already have the rules and regulations are you cannot crowd another car off the track. Okay, so you cannot use your car to push another car off the track. Regardless of going around a corner, you can't do that in a straight. Okay, and that applies to anywhere around a track. We already know that that's a rule of the sport. You just can't do it. We already know that that constitutes crowding another car off the track. That's dangerous. You'll get an infringement for that. You know that you cannot gain a position by overtaking off the track. You know that you cannot defend a position by being off track. By going off track, allowing you to maintain more speed or cut a corner and maintaining your position, you can't do that. You have to concede that place. If you've cut a chicane, for example, cut a corner and maintain a position, you have to let that car by you because you went off the track. We already know that. Nobody can contest that. Okay, if you try to overtake another car and go off the track, then you have to give that place back because you went off the track. Lando Norris was already ahead of Max Verstappen going into this corner. Max is the one that was behind and now trying to go from 4th place to 3rd place. He was the one that was actually performing the overtake and he couldn't keep his car on the track in order to actually gain that place back. He's done it in a way that is out of control. In doing so, he has forced the other driver to have to take avoiding action because had the other driver attempted to keep his position on the track, attempted to pick a line around that corner to keep himself on the track, he would have been hit by a car that was out of control because the out of control car, all that it cared about was winning a race to the apex because of this supposedly bullshit driving guideline, right? That the only thing that matters is winning the race there and nothing else beyond that matters. Not at all. All you've got to do to win a Grand Prix is win the race to the first corner because nothing else beyond that matters. No, everything beyond that and beyond that and beyond that and beyond that matters. Because it's not just about winning the race to one point in time, is it? It's about what happens after that time. Because if you've done something that's as a result of being out of control at that point in time, you then cause a problem, then you've caused the problem that you get penalised for.
Of the way the regulations are written. And we'll use again the 3D just to illustrate from up above when we got down
Cartoon
to that apex there at that point.
So it's only now that they're level. So the car on the outside should be able to carry more speed, and yet the car on the inside's the one that's come from behind and is now going ahead, so it's carrying more speed. If you carry more speed into a tight corner than another car that's on a wider line, what's your chance of making that corner? Well, we'll see what his chance of making that corner is.
Point, Verstappen was the car in front. Just draw a line just to illustrate that there. And the reason was, Martin, because...
Oh, they've not continued the cartoon to show us where the wacky racing car went off the track.
The FIA use these guidelines, or stewards use these guidelines that have been created.
That have been created, right? They've been created. Why are these only being shown to us now? Why were we not, having done Google searches for them up until now, you can't really find much that defines this. When this is the governing body of a global sport where it's got competitors around the globe competing in motorsport worldwide, surely there should be a set of driving standards that all competitors in all forms of motorsport know to adhere to in terms of what's acceptable and what's not in terms of driving in a motor race. What's going on there? So they're using this one, claiming that this is the one that applies when clearly it's not. The car was already on the outside, and that was the one that was in the lead. The car performing the overtake was the car that was from the fourth position that was trying to gain the position to third position. So the actual document is that the actual parameters that will be adhering to is the other one where you're trying to perform an overtake on the inside. They're lying by utilising this one. Okay, I'll go through some manoeuvres where a driver is trying to overtake on the outside. Lewis Hamilton around the first corner of a chicane at Imola 2021 would be an example of that. Likewise, around the first corner of a chicane at Monza 2021. This was earlier in the race than when Max landed up on his head. We'll do the slow-mos of that, and we'll go use these guidelines on that to see who is in the right and who is in the wrong when it comes to that. Haven't done it yet, we'll do it. And we'll use these parameters of overtaking around the outside. That's when a car has come from behind, has taken the outer line to the corner. This time, the car that was on the outside was ahead, and it's the car from the inside that's trying to make the pass. But therefore, here we go. Therefore, to be entitled to be given room, including at exit when overtaking, they must have their front axle at least alongside at the apex of the corner. Well, no, because if the other car that's on the inside has rushed themselves to get their car to that point at the corner, then that means that they are going to take a wide line on entry, shutting the door on the car that's on the outside. The decision is made at the braking point of the corner, whereby the car on the outside assesses whether it's entitled to be left room around that track and slows its car to an appropriate speed to enable it to take a wide line around the corner and still remain on track on exit. If somebody then jumps ahead of it in that time period between the braking zone and the apex of the corner, changing those dynamics, well, the braking force selected at the braking zone is going to be the wrong braking force because it's going to determine it's going to be a different speed and a different line and everything else that then is all changed come the apex. That causes safety problems, doesn't it? When cars are trying to go as high a speed as possible because they're racing one another, then trying to change all of them dynamics in a split second like that, well, you're asking for trouble. And we are looking at the safe contesting of motorsport, aren't we? So it's a bullshit regulation. It's a bullshit rule. Who's worked this through? Who in the governing body has worked this through and said, no, our responsibility is to apply rules and regulations and guidelines to the drivers that allow for the safe contesting of motorsport for all. It's there. Be driven in a safe and controlled manner throughout the manoeuvre. So if the car on the outside has to be driven in a safe and controlled manner, that applies to every competitor in the sport. It doesn't mean the car on the inside can get away without being driven in a safe and controlled manner, does it? Evidently, it doesn't. Karun is going to pretend that the driver on the inside can do whatever they want and be able to make the corner within track limits. So they're all self-explanatory. If you are driving around the motor racing circuit, right, then you are expected to drive in a safe and controlled manner and be able to drive within the track limits. That's a universal rule of motor racing, is it not? Yeah? So the apex is irrelevant, isn't it? If you're driving in motor racing, you're expected to drive in a safe and controlled manner and be able to make it around that within the track limits. That's a universal rule, isn't it?
In collaboration, has to be said, with the GPDA, the Grand Prix Driver Association, and it clearly states that the car overtaking must be fully alongside the car front. And Max knew that, and that's why he was racing the apex, wasn't it?
And they're trying to present, well, because Max knew that, that's why Max raced him to the apex. No. Max has always done that. Max is a bully. Max never yields. It's a case, as we've heard many times before, it's a case of you yield or we crash. That's why he got his nickname, Max Verstappen. You back out or we crash. And now they're trying to present Max as being the genius. Oh, Max knew this, and that's why Max won the race to the apex. Look how the media is used to present somebody in a completely different manner. Max the genius is such an expert of these rules that's why he did it. Is he such an expert of the rules of driving in a safe and controlled manner? He didn't know that part of the rule, did he? Look what Karen would defend Max with.
You're tempted to do that all the time. First of all, Lando left him too much space.
Look at Brundle blaming Lando. Oh, the problem here is that Lando has left him space. Oh, it's Lando's fault for leaving Max Verstappen. There's nothing to do with it.
As he did, in fact, in the very first corner of the Grand Prix.
So, once again, in the very first corner of the Grand Prix, Max has gone into that corner with too much speed to leave room for the car that he's trying to make a passing move on. Okay, Max is again on the inside. He's got a car on his outside. He's trying to make a passing move, and he's gone into the corner with too much speed, leaving no room on track for the car that's on his outside. Carried too much speed into the corner is dangerous. Okay, he's not driving in a safe and controlled manner. He's not left room for the car on the outside of him, and therefore he is driving in a dangerous manner. And Brundle is saying, oh, like on turn 1, where Lando left Max too much room. He's left Max too much room here. He's blaming Lando Norris.
Invitation. Max will always take that invitation and
validating Max Verstappen again.
It's on that occasion. It's not always easy to define the apex of any given corner.
Exactly, Martin. It's not always easy to define the apex of any given corner. Now, what I will do, I took some recording of yesterday's qualifying session, and it's also quickly, I'll go through what Martin actually said, because it links with this. Absolutely links with this. You, in a split second, try and define who's ahead at a given point. And that in that split second, which you have to then take a split second still and work it out, hang on a minute, then drivers are now 200 yards down the road. Who was in the right, who was in the wrong? Too late then, isn't it? It's too late then. Either the crash has already happened or somebody's off the track. Who's entitled to it? Oh, well, maybe you were, maybe you weren't. We don't know. Because we need to see that still at the apex again as to who was in the right and who was in the wrong. That's not what it's about, is it? Think of the motor racing formulas where they don't have cameras there. And they've just got the human eye. They've just got marshals and stewards being able to make the judgment. And they can determine who's gone off the track and who hasn't gone off the track. They can't determine necessarily who won a race to an apex, can they? But what they can do is look at the whole scenario, how those cars come out of the corner and see who remains on track and who hasn't remained on track. See, they can look at the whole scenario like that, can't they? They don't just look at the snapshot, do they? But look at what these two are presenting.
Especially a much longer, faster one. But on this occasion at turn 12, you can, and you're absolutely right. But critically...
you know, this is the debate, but you're absolutely right. It's a fake debate. Okay, what it is, they pretend that they're arguing different sides of it, but they're actually in total agreement. This is the circle jerk that is played out in front of us. Yes, you're absolutely right. Oh, but what about this? Well, yes, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. We're all absolutely right, aren't we? Max is all absolutely right. Or, oh, the FIA may not be about this, but Max is absolutely right. The circle jerk.
Max Verstappen did not manage to keep his car under control and stay on the racetrack.
You're absolutely right there, Martin.
That's right. However,
That's right. That's right. See, we're all in agreement with one another, aren't we? We're all circle jerking. That's right. Oh, that's right.
another flaw is nowhere does it say that the car being overtaken.
Another flaw with the FIA's guidelines is that nowhere does it say that the car being overtaken has to keep on track. That's a flaw, isn't it, Karen? Is that the best you can do? Nowhere does it say in UK law that you can't push another person off a cliff. Go and find me the law that says that, Karen. I don't think you'll find it. I don't think there's a single law written that says, nowhere does it say that you can't push somebody off a cliff. So does that mean you've not murdered somebody if you've shoved somebody off a cliff and they've fallen to their death? Yeah, but nowhere does it say you can't. So that means you're not a murderer then, Karen. What a ridiculous argument, Karen. Karen is telling us that nowhere, this is a problem with the rules. Nowhere does it say that you have to keep on track. Yeah, the general rules are you've got to drive in a safe manner. You can't go off the track because you'll get a penalty for going off the track. But in an overtake, nowhere does it say that you can't do that. That's Karoon's rules.
Especially a much longer, faster one. But on this occasion at turn 12,
they put Karen in front of us to tell us the rules of the sport. And this is the best you can do, Karen.
you can, and you're absolutely right.
Absolutely right.
But critically, Max Verstappen did not manage to keep his car under control and stay on the racetrack.
That's right. However, another flaw is nowhere does it say that the car being overtaken has to stay within track limits. It says that the overtaking car must be able to make the corner within track limits, which was in this case Lando. And that was a key definition, was they all...
And again, I think I said this in the previous video, if you've got two cars side by side trying to go round a corner together, right, side by side, two cars going round a corner. If the car on the inside can't remain on track, what's going to happen? Oh, he's going to probably hit the car that's on the outside as he veers off the track, isn't he? Oh, is that driving in an unsafe manner? Yes, that's driving in an unsafe manner, isn't it? But Karen's saying, yeah, but the problem is the rules, because nowhere does it say here that he has to stay on the track. Oh, that's a problem with the rules, isn't it, Karen? No, it's not a problem with the rules, Karen, okay? Let me just explain to this again. Two cars going round a corner. If the car on the inside veers across that track and off the track the other side, what's going to be the problem, Karen? Oh, he's going to go right through where the other car is, and there's going to be a massive crash. So that's what we need to think about, isn't it, Karen? Do you think going to court and going, yeah, but it didn't say I had to stay on the track? I didn't, yeah, but nowhere in the highway code did it say I couldn't drive off the road through the other car. No, you've caused a crash, Karen. Yeah, the other car's the one that had to take evasive action. This is the expert presenting that there's a problem with the rules. This is the governing body of the sport saying, yeah, it's the rules that are the problem here. The fundamental principles of motor racing dictate that. And are they trying to ignore them?
always classified Lando as the overtaker and not Max. The other point is, under the guidelines for overtaking on the outside, it doesn't say anything about forcing another car off the track.
Yes. Right. So if you're driving around a motor racing circuit, right, if you're side by side with another car, okay, if you're slightly in front of another car, if you, let's say you're a nose ahead of another car and you veer over, let's say you're driving down the straight and you veer, there's a car on your right hand side, you're a nose length ahead of it, and you squeeze your car over to the right, leaving no room for that car on the right, okay, and you veer all the way over to the right hand side of the track and force that car off the road. What's the infringement? You've crowded another car off the track, haven't you? That car's entitled to be there. By you moving into its space, you've crowded it off the track. That's an infringement. That's a penalty. That's motor racing. You've driven dangerously. You've crowded another motor racing car off the track. You get a penalty for it. Karen's saying in the cornering guidelines, nowhere does it say that you can't do that. Look at what he's validating. Look at what he's validating. Again, who at the FIA, when somebody is making proposals as to rules and regulations, is dictating, well, what a stupid suggestion that is. Who would introduce those guidelines? Who would validate those guidelines? Are these guidelines made for a media show, a show owned by a media company to create Running Man? Hey, the show where you've got to stay alive. Drive to stay alive. Oh, maybe somebody's already come up with an idea for that. Who knows? Who knows?
If I switch to the guidelines for an overtaking move on the inside,
talk about the general principles of motor racing rather than the guidelines for just taking a corner. Because I can't get over some of these things that he's saying.
Must be able to make the corner within track limits, which was in this case Lando, and that was a key definition. Was they always classified Lando as the overtaker?
That's the key,
and not Max. The other point is, under the guidelines for overtaking on the outside, it doesn't say anything about forcing another car off the track.
So there's nothing in the guidelines for going around a corner about forcing another car off the track. Okay, what are the guidelines for forcing another car off the track, Karen? Is it that you're not allowed to force another car off the track? Okay, yeah. The guidelines regarding forcing another car off the track, right? Do they only apply down the straights, or do they apply around the track? You know, because they're called the offence is called forcing another car off the track. Okay, what's the track? Is that the track? Yeah, the entire thing, or just a snapshot? Is that just the still moment in time at the apex, or is that the track, which includes the straights and all of the corners? Karen, let me know what you think in the comment section. Karen, what the guidelines are regarding forcing a car off the track. What's the track? Define the track, Karen. Oh, is that the thing that's within track limits? Let me know, Karen. Oh, because nowhere did it say, when we're talking about going round corners, that you can't force another car off the track, says Karen. This man's still got a job. This man has still got a job being put on the TV, lying to your children in this manner. That's an abuse. That's an abuse.
If I switch to the guidelines for an overtaking move on the inside, it quite clearly says you cannot force your rival off the track. And I think that is where...
Oh, but the guidelines for an overtake on the inside. Okay, so the thing is, if you're on the outside, okay, if you're the car on the outside of a curve, in order for you to be doing the forcing, you'd be forcing the car on the inside off on the inside of the track. Yeah? That's the way it'd work. And he's trying to say, nowhere does it say the car that's on the inside isn't allowed to force a car. It's all lies. But now he's trying to say that overtaken on the inside, which is the guidelines that apply. And we'll work these through because this is the guidelines that would have applied to Max Verstappen. Okay, but actually this should be assessed at the braking zone of the corner to determine firstly whether he's entitled to track room around the corner. And again, we don't know whether he was halfway alongside Norris at the point in the braking zone where this should be assessed. But let's just assume that Max Verstappen was entitled to be left track room going around that corner. Okay, let's just say he was. Let's just go with that he was entitled to challenge around that corner. Okay, in order, having met that criteria, he has then got to do this. Okay, the apex bit is bollocks. Okay, the apex bit is bollocks. Or the actual criteria there is that he is halfway alongside Norris's car at the braking zone of the corner. So the apex, the nose at apex is irrelevant. All right, we'll say that he qualifies to be entitled to room around there. You can't determine whether he's entitled to room around an apex at the apex. That's too late, isn't it? If Lando is picking his line around the corner, what is going to determine whether Lando must give Max room around the corner? You can't determine that at the apex. That's too late. Because if Lando has driven his car to the apex, well, there's no track room for Max Verstappen. That's too late, isn't it? Who in the FIA has actually flagged that up as a problem with these guidelines? Oh, there's a problem with the guidelines, isn't there? There is a problem with the guidelines. So, you have to determine who's entitled to track room at the braking zone. Max is entitled to track room. So the apex is bollocks. It's not about whose nose is there at the apex. Max, though, having been determined is eligible for track room by being at least halfway alongside at the braking zone, has to drive his car in a safe and controlled manner throughout the manoeuvre, on entry, at the apex, and exit. So he has to drive his car in a safe manner on entry to the corner, at the apex of the corner, and on exit of that corner. Driving in a safe and controlled manner means keeping your car on the track, not crowding the other car, okay, and being able to be in control of your vehicle. Yeah, safe and controlled manner. Without deliberately forcing the other car off. Why they put it in brackets? Whether you have an intention of doing something or not, okay, is irrelevant. What's relevant is what did you do? Okay, if you drove around the corner and you're on the inside and on exit of the corner you veered all the way over to the edge of the track, meaning there was no space on track for the other car, you have driven that car off track. You saying, yeah, but I didn't mean to, is irrelevant. Okay, that's irrelevant. The fact is, you did it. And that is the offence. That's what you get the penalty for. So this word being deliberately, it's a waste of time. It's irrelevant. George Russell can say, oh, I didn't mean to push Valtteri Bottas off the track. I didn't mean to leave him no room on the track. It doesn't matter what you meant. The fact is, you didn't leave him track room. That's the offence. You clearly drove your car on a line or with too much speed so that you couldn't maintain an appropriate line, which took you there, and that is the problem. It's not what you thought you wanted to do, okay? That doesn't matter. It's what you did that gets judged on, okay? That's what it is. And this includes leaving a fair and acceptable width for the car being overtaken from the apex to the exit of the corner, which Max didn't do. And you've got to be able to make that corner within track limits. So number three there, Max didn't. Well, number two, Max didn't drive his car in a safe and controlled manner throughout the manoeuvre. No, it wasn't safe, wasn't controlled. He took too much speed into the corner, and that is reflected by the fact that he couldn't make it around that corner within track limits and went off the track himself. So he's not safe on entry. He's not safe at the apex, and he's not safe. He's safe at a photograph. when he's stationary? The apex. Does that determine a photograph of two cars being still? How are you going to determine safe or not? Oh, he's not in contact with the other car, so that makes him safe. Oh, we're looking at the whole picture, the whole scenario of the FAA. They're looking at a snapshot. Which snapshot is relevant and which one isn't? It's all bullshit, isn't it? It's all bullshit. When you can obliterate everything like this, you realise that this is all a facade. Okay, when you can smash the shit out of something, you realise it is a facade. Everything that I say relating to the real rules of engagement that the other drivers comply with, you can utilise them, follow them through, and they work for everything. And that's why they were developed that way over decades. This works for nothing other than Max Verstappen, other than to validate Max Verstappen. Understand that. And those of you that don't understand it, if this ever gets put in front of a judge, and the point of a judge is the reason that somebody should be given the position of a judge is that they should be able to have a brain that is capable of thinking, a brain that is capable of understanding the types of things that I'm presenting and understanding the validity of them and realizing that what I'm saying is based on truth and is based on fact, and when truth and fact can obliterate everything else that is put in front of it, it remains as truth and fact. It remains constant. So that's all there is to it, and that's how you make a lawful judgment. That's what it's all about. So everything that they're presenting is lies. Everything that the FIA claim to present, they're now assigning the FIA's logo to this, this document here, this not document, this graphic on the screen has got the FIA logo to it. So the FIA are endorsing this, demonstrates that the FIA are not fit for purpose. Karun and Martin presenting this demonstrate that they're not fit for purpose. They're just presenting a corrupt narrative of a corrupt agenda. And this is what they've done all the way through. They did this at Abu Dhabi 2021. As my other videos will evidence, this is what they do. You have to leave fair and acceptable room on the track for every other car. Okay, when you're motor racing, you have to leave fair and acceptable room on the track for the other vehicles that you're competing against. You have to do that down the straight. Yeah, you're not allowed to just drive a car off the track, are you? Because you didn't leave it fair and acceptable room. If you do that, you'll get a penalty, or you might get black flagged for driving dangerously. But nowhere does it say that going around the corner, you have to do that, says Karen. Can you see the problem there? Can you see the problem there? This is how corrupt people will try to present something corruptly to try to win themselves an argument or absolve themselves of consequence in a situation. And again, this is the legal process. You will get lawyers that will try and twist an argument to present bullshit that way, and that's how you need to be able to obliterate bullshit. And as long as you can think in the manner like this, you can obliterate bullshit. And that's what this world needs to start learning how to be able to do. And that's why I make videos like this. Start trying to remove your desires, remove what you want to happen, okay? And focus on facts, and focus on running these scenarios through, focusing on the reasons. What happens if you do this? Why would they have developed them rules in the first place? Why do they have those rules? If this rule applies here, why would it not apply there? What's the difference? Should there be a difference? You have to consider all of these different things. And if something doesn't make sense, then there's something wrong with it, isn't there? And therefore it's not valid. Because whatever these rules and regulations or guidelines are, they have to make sense and they have to be valid and they have to stand the tests. And those tests apply at every circuit, at every race of the calendar, at every corner of every circuit of every race of the calendar. Otherwise, they're not fit for purpose, are they? And yet we've got the media presenting it to validate Max Verstappen and Red Bull once again. So what's going on there then? What's going on there?
It's gotten a bit tricky and the drivers would like...
It's gotten a bit tricky. Karen's saying, "Oh, it's these things here from the FIA have gotten tricky. The stewards are just applying these, and these have got tricky." When did they get tricky? Oh, they all got tricky after Charlie died, because everybody else working at the FIA didn't know them. Yes, that's right. Everybody else that works for FIFA doesn't know the rules of football when the head of FIFA died. Is that right? Everybody at the RFU, when the head of the RFU died, the rules died with him as well. Nobody else knew the rules or what they were for. It's all, yeah, everybody at the FIA doesn't know the rules or what they're for. What's going on there then? What is going on there, people? What is going on there?
And not Max. The other point is, under the guidelines for overtaking on the outside, it doesn't say anything about forcing another car off the track.
Yeah, on the outside, against... Here we go.
As the overtaker and not Max. The other point is, under the guidelines for overtaking on the outside, it doesn't say anything about forcing another car off the track.
Right, so the guidance is being given, and Karun is trying to tell us that, oh, here's a problem with them, and here's another problem with it, and here's another problem. So it's all problems with these guidelines, isn't it? And so he wants to go to the guide. Is he going to these guidelines?
I switch to the guidelines for an overtaking.
Overtaking on the inside of the corner. He was talking about the overtaking around the outside of the corner, and the guidelines for overtaking around the outside don't talk about forcing somebody off the track. And I think I've said this a bit earlier in the presentation, is that if you are the car that's going around the outside, then you're on the outer edge of that track around the outside. The only forcing off track you're doing, you'd be forcing the inner car off the track on the inside of the track. So having come round the corner on the outside line, you're then forcing the car off on the inside. We're not talking about that, are we? Because you've already spoken about the apex and the cars being side by side as they're coming through the apex. And as they swing around the apex, they're actually moving away from the inside of the track and heading towards the outside of the track. The car that's at risk of being driven off the track is the car that's on the outside. For the car that's already on the outside, to force the other car to the track, they'd have to drive across the track to the inside of the track, having come around the corner, driving that inside car off the track on the inside of the track. Hence, you don't need to write anything like that. And Karen's saying, oh, one of the problems is that this overtaking on the outside doesn't tell us anything about whether the car on the outside is allowed to drive the car out on the inside off the track or not. He's fucking mental, this guy is.
Move on the inside, it quite clearly says you cannot force your rival off the track. And I think that is where it's gotten a bit tricky, and the drivers would like lines and not. Overtaking car must be able to make the corner within track limits, which was in this case Lando. And that was a key definition, was they always classified Lando as the overtaker and not Max. The other point is, under the guidelines for overtaking on the outside, it doesn't say anything about forcing another car off the track. And if I switch to the guidelines for an overtaking move on the inside, it quite clearly says you cannot force your rival off the track. And I think that is where it's gotten a bit tricky, and the drivers would like.
So Karen here is presenting, yeah, look at this. This is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem with these guidelines. And this is where it's got tricky for the drivers, and the drivers don't know. Is there a problem, anybody? Where's the problem lie? The problem lies with the FIA, with the fact that if they've changed these regulations to be this, but nobody can confirm whether they have or not, or this is just some dirty behind-the-scenes validation for something that's wrong, okay? But now being presented with us as, oh yeah, the reason why it's wrong is because of these problems, right? Well, You're a governing body. You're not fit for purpose if you've enabled these problems, are you? And then we've got the media, and their way of explaining it is, oh, it's because of these problems. And when you work through these problems, you can realise that this entire thing is corrupt, can't you?
This evaluated.
And that's the end of the presentation. Okay? And that is the damaging presentation. Let me see if I can come out of this. Where do I do that? 2 seconds. I was trying to look for viewing statistics of it, to be fair. But you've got 330 reactions to it. What have we got there? 373 comments. Is it 66,000? Is that the number of views? 66,000 views. 66,000 views, I think. And that's what they're conditioning people's minds with. That's damaging. And this is what I'm saying to you all. Okay? The media is lying to everybody. Have a brain. Be able to work things through. Be able to work through the implications of these things. See what rules hold true and what don't. And when you work them through, and you know everything else that you know about the sport, them trying to present that is actually criminal. It's criminal. It's damaging. It's mind conditioning. Right, that'll do on this video. It's gone on far too long. I intended to make it a 15-minute video, but evidently I'm not capable of doing that. Something I'm going to have to work on. Thanks for your time. More to come after, well, whether it's before or after the Grand Prix, who knows. Cheers.